What if some of the most profound teachings on life and happiness came from a source you'd never, ever expect? Today, we're going to dive into a philosophy that really challenges our modern assumptions, and it all kicks off with a very surprising teacher. Okay, so where are we getting all this from? Well, our source for this explainer is a text that documents a series of talks from way back in 1968. These talks are a deep dive into a specific chapter of the ancient Sanskrit text, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and they focus on the incredible story and teachings of a figure named Prahlāda Mahārāja. And here's the kicker. The teacher delivering these super complex, deep lessons was a 5-year-old boy. The source text describes him gathering his little buddies during school recess, not to play tag or something, but to talk about the very nature of reality. It's a pretty stunning image, right? So, to really get our heads around his worldview, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at his unique backstory in A Boy Against the World. Then, we'll explore his urgent message in The Rarest Opportunity. After that, we'll see how he explains our search for connection in Searching for Our Dearest Friend. Then, cover the obstacles in The Traps of Material Life. And finally, we'll get to his ultimate vision in Consciousness and Universal Love. Okay, so first up, let's set the stage. Who exactly was this 5-year-old philosopher, and what kind of world was he living in? So our main character is Prahlāda. He's born into this super powerful royal family, but here's the deep conflict. His family, and pretty much his entire society, is described as being deeply atheistic and materialistic. And yet, somehow, from the moment he's born, Prahlāda has this unwavering devotion and this deep spiritual insight that he's just bursting to share with everyone. The text basically sets up this fundamental clash of worldviews. On one side, you've got the demigods, and that's just a term for people who are devoted to a spiritual life. On the other side, you have the demons, and we're not talking about monsters with horns here. The text defines them as people who are just purely focused on an atheistic material life. So Prahlāda was this demigod kid born right into the heart of a demon family. And this brings us right to Prahlāda's core message to his friends. It all starts with this real sense of urgency about the unique position they, and we, are in, simply by being human. So here's the central argument. This human life is incredibly rare, and it's temporary. It's presented as this one singular chance we get to achieve what the text calls the highest perfection, which is all about spiritual understanding. So it's not just about being alive, it's this fleeting opportunity for some serious spiritual evolution. Now, to really make you feel that urgency, the teaching does this fascinating and honestly kind of sobering little calculation. It takes a hypothetical 100-year lifespan. Let's see how that time really gets spent. Okay, now check out this breakdown. According to the text's math, it's pretty stark. 50 years, that's half your life, is just gone, poof, to sleep. Another 20 are lost in what it calls the playful ignorance of just being a kid. And then a final 20 are spent in old age, when our bodies and our senses are starting to fail us. When you add it all up, the argument is that we're left with this shockingly small window of time to actually pursue a higher purpose. So if we only have this tiny window, what are we supposed to be doing with it? Well, Prahlāda's teaching then shifts to something we can all relate to, that universal human drive for a deep, real, meaningful connection. And he starts by asking this really simple but profound question to get to the heart of it all. What is the thing we hold most dear? What do we value above everything else? The answer, according to this philosophy, is your own self. I mean, think about it, right? Our instinct for self-preservation is the most powerful drive we have. The text argues this isn't just some biological impulse to protect our bodies. It's because the eternal soul, our actual self, is living inside it. This concept of the self, or Atma, is seen as having these different layers. There's the obvious one, the physical body. Then there's the more subtle layer, your mind, your intelligence. And finally, there's the real self, the soul, which is described as a tiny spiritual spark of the Supreme Lord. So the teaching concludes that our search for the perfect friend, the perfect partner, is actually a reflection of a much, much deeper spiritual quest. It's the soul's natural desire to reconnect with its original source, what the text calls our dearest friend and the ultimate object of our love, Vishnu. Okay, but if this spiritual connection is so natural, what gets in our way? Well, Prahlāda's teaching uses 2 really powerful analogies to describe the traps of material life that keep us from it. The first one is the camel's pleasure.
The text says, "A camel enjoys eating thorny twigs." Now, the thorns cut its tongue, and as blood starts to ooze out, the camel tastes its own blood and thinks it's absolutely delicious. This is used as an analogy for material pleasure, the idea that it's often a form of self-inflicted pain that we just mistake for enjoyment.
The second analogy is just as striking, and this one might hit a little closer to home. Family attachment is compared to a silkworm. It spins this beautiful, comfortable cocoon from its own essence. It's a place of security, but eventually that very creation becomes a prison that it can't escape from. The point here is that even our most cherished attachments, if they're purely material, can end up trapping the soul. So if you can actually navigate these traps, what's the result? Well, the final part of the teaching moves toward a state of higher consciousness and a really profound sense of universal connection. First, the text asserts that human knowledge, when it's left to its own devices, is flawed. It lists 4 main defects. 1, our senses are imperfect. 2, we are sure to commit mistakes. 3, we are subject to being an illusion, we get tricked easily. And 4, we have a tendency to cheat, to pretend we know more than we really do. And this is why a higher source of knowledge is seen as so necessary. So the path to overcoming these defects, according to the teaching, is to realize that a supreme consciousness is literally everywhere. It's present in everything and everyone. The moment you start to see that same spiritual essence in a person, in an animal, even in a plant, that's when you lay the foundation for true universal love. But what does this connection even look like? The text offers this beautiful analogy. Merging your consciousness with the supreme isn't about losing your identity. It's like a green bird flying into a big green tree. From a distance, they seem to merge. They look like one thing. But if you get up close, you see both the bird on the trees still have their individual existence. And this brings us to the ultimate application of all this wisdom. If every single living being is a spiritual soul who's just temporarily disconnected, then the highest form of mercy isn't just material charity. According to Prahlāda, it's sharing the knowledge that can awaken their original spiritual awareness, what this text calls Krishna consciousness, which is basically a loving consciousness of the divine. So we're left with this final, really provocative thought. If we take this ancient teaching and universalize its core principle, that the deepest form of compassion is helping others see a bigger picture, it really makes you wonder, beyond all our daily obligations, what is the most important thing we truly owe each other?